All right, so get this. We're diving into the quest to bring back woolly mammoths.
Woolly mammoths?
Yeah, like those massive furry creatures, straight out of the Ice Age.
Oh, right. Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Well, a company called Colossal Biosciences is actually working on making that happen.
Seriously,
Seriously, they're using some crazy cutting-edge science to do it.
that's got to be a pretty ambitious project.
Oh, absolutely, and they're already making headlines with their woolly mouse.
They're what?
A woolly mouse? It's a mouse genetically modified to have mammoth-like traits, like super thick fur.
Wow. So like a mini mammoth?
Exactly. It's like a sneak peek of what they want to do with elephants.
So like Jurassic Park, but with mammoths instead.
Kind of in this deep dive, we're going to unpack all of that, the how, the why, and even the should we even of bringing back the woolly mammoth.
It's a big question for sure.
It really is so much to think about. So first off, how is de-extinction even possible? These creatures haven't been around for like thousands of years.
Well, it's all thanks to some incredible advances in gene editing, specifically CRISPR technology.
CRISPR.
Yeah, CRISPR. It's like a super precise tool that lets scientists target and modify specific genes, basically like editing the code of life.
So it's like cutting and pasting DNA.
That's a pretty good analogy. And it goes hand in hand with synthetic biology, which is about building new biological systems from scratch.
So are scientists basically stitching together a woolly mammoth genome in a lab?
Well, not exactly from scratch. They start with ancient DNA extracted from frozen mammoth carcasses they find in places like Siberia.
So they're digging up old mammoths and pulling out their DNA.
Pretty much. But the challenge is this DNA is often like a really old puzzle with missing pieces. It's fragmented and degraded over time.
Oh, that makes sense. So how do they fill in the gaps in the genetic code?
That's where the Asian elephant comes in.
The Asian elephant.
Yep, it's the woolly mammoth's closest living relative. So they use its genome as a sort of blueprint to help guide the reconstruction process.
Oh, that's clever. So they're not creating a carbon copy of a woolly mammoth.
Not exactly. It's more like engineering an elephant with key woolly mammoth traits, that thick fur, a metabolism for cold climates, and even special hemoglobin for oxygen in freezing temperatures.
Like an elephant built for the Ice Age.
Exactly.
That's wild. So that explains why the woolly mouse is such a big deal, right?
Yep. It's a way to test those genetic modifications in a living organism.
So it's like a first step towards a mammoth-like elephant.
Right. By putting mammoth genes into mouse embryos, they could see those traits being expressed like longer, denser fur.
So proof that you can actually transfer these traits.
Exactly.
But I imagine going from a mouse to an elephant is a whole other ballgame, right?
Oh, absolutely. The size gestation periods,
Yeah.
biological complexity, it's a huge leap.
And then there are the ethical considerations, right? Especially using surrogate mothers.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about there.
Which brings us to the big ethical debate around de-extinction. I imagine there are some strong opinions on both sides.
For sure, there are people who are really excited about the possibilities and others who have serious concerns.
So let's start with the pros. What are some of the arguments in favor of bringing back the woolly mammoth?
Well, some proponents believe that reintroducing mammoth-like elephants could actually benefit the environment.
Really? How so?
Woolly mammoths were what they call ecosystem engineers. Their grazing habits played a big role in maintaining the tundra ecosystem.
Oh, interesting. So bringing them back could help restore that ecosystem.
That's the idea. Their grazing would keep certain plants in check, encourage the growth of others, and potentially even slow down permafrost thawing.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying woolly mammoths could help fight climate change?
It's a theory some scientists are exploring. The idea is that by restoring the tundra to a state more like the last ice age, we could actually mitigate some of the negative impacts of climate change.
Wow, that's amazing. But permafrost, what's that exactly?
It's ground that's been frozen for thousands of years, and it holds a ton of trapped carbon. When it thaws, that carbon gets released into the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming.
So mammoths could help keep the permafrost frozen.
That's the hope.
That's incredible. But I'm sure there's pushback against this idea. What are some of the concerns critics have raised?
One of the biggest concerns is the potential impact on the existing tundra ecosystem.
So even though they might help with climate change, they could cause other ecological problems.
It's a possibility. We have to consider introducing a genetically modified species. Could have unforeseen consequences. It might disrupt the balance that's already there.
Like they could become an invasive species.
Exactly. They might outcompete other herbivores for food damage plants or even introduce diseases that native species aren't prepared for.
That's a scary thought.
And then there are the ethical considerations about the animals themselves.
Right. What about their well-being?
Exactly. Imagine being a woolly mammoth born into a world completely different from what your ancestors knew. New predators, new food sources, a potentially hostile climate.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask of any animal. Are we bringing them back just to make them suffer?
It's a question we need to grapple with, and it leads to another concern, the slippery slope argument.
The slippery slope argument. What's that?
It's the worry that if we start bringing back extinct species, where do we stop? Will it lead to reviving even more species, some that could be dangerous to ecosystems or even humans?
Like bringing back a T-Rex?
Maybe not that extreme, but the point is, this technology raises big questions about how much we should be manipulating nature.
So it's not just about the woolly mammoth, it's about the precedent we're setting for the future.
Exactly. Once we cross that line of de-extinction, it could be hard to turn back.
This is getting really deep. So it's not just a scientific question, it's a societal one too.
Absolutely. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential benefits and risks and involve everyone, not just scientists, but also ethicists, policymakers, and the public.
Makes sense. We need to approach de-extinction with caution and humility because we don't have all the answers.
That's right.
What I find fascinating is that even if Colossal Biosciences doesn't succeed in bringing back the woolly mammoth, the technology they're developing could have huge implications for other conservation efforts.
Oh, definitely. The techniques they're pioneering could be used to protect other endangered species, maybe by introducing genetic variations that make them more resilient to disease or climate change.
Like giving them a fighting chance in a changing world, that's pretty amazing.
It is.
And what about the potential for medical breakthroughs?
Right. De-extinction research is pushing the boundaries of genetic engineering and synthetic biology. These advancements could lead to breakthroughs in things like organ regeneration and treatments for genetic disorders.
Wow. So this could help both humans and other species. That's incredible, but it also makes you think about our role in the natural world. If we can bring back extinct creatures, where do we draw the line?
That's a big question scientists and ethicists are wrestling with right now. De-extinction challenges our understanding of evolution and how much humans should intervene in natural processes.
It's like we're entering a whole new era of scientific possibilities, but we need to be careful about the ethical implications. So back to the woolly mammoth project. What are the next steps for Colossal Biosciences? Are they just going to release a herd of these mammoth-like elephants into the Arctic and see what happens?
It's definitely not that simple. There are still some major scientific and regulatory hurdles to clear.
Like what?
Well, scientifically speaking, scaling up from a mouse to a full-grown mammoth-like elephant is a huge challenge. They need to figure out how to create viable embryos, successfully implant them, and make sure the surrogate mothers and offspring are healthy.
That sounds like a massive undertaking. What about the regulatory side of things?
Releasing a genetically engineered species into the wild is totally uncharted territory. There are laws and policies to navigate, and public perception plays a big role too.
Right, people need to feel like this is being done responsibly and ethically.
Exactly. Colossal Biosciences is trying to be transparent about their research and address concerns. They know that building trust is essential.
This has been a fascinating look at the Woolly Mammoth Revival Project. So far, we've covered the science, the ethics, the ecological complexities, and the potential impact on conservation and medicine.
And we've only scratched the surface.
I know, right? There's so much more to explore.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll dig deeper into the potential downsides of de-extinction and really try to figure out if bringing back the woolly mammoth is a good idea or not.
Ooh, can't wait. Stay tuned, folks.
This conversation is just getting started.
We're back and ready to dig a little deeper into some of those potential downsides of de-extinction.
Yeah, things aren't always so simple, right?
Definitely not. Like with any powerful technology, there are some risks to think about.
For sure, it's important to remember that.
So we touched on the ecological impact earlier, but could you maybe break that down a little more for us?
Sure. So imagine the tundra ecosystem as this complex machine that's been running for thousands of years without woolly mammoths, right?
Right.
And then suddenly we introduce this large herbivore back into the mix, like throwing a wrench in the gears.
Because things have changed so much since the last woolly mammoth was around.
Exactly. The vegetation, the other animals, even the climate itself, it's all different.
So there's no guarantee that these mammoth-like elephants would just fit right in.
Not necessarily. They could disrupt the balance that's already there.
So that could end up being like an invasive species.
It's a real possibility they might outcompete other herbivores for food or damage sensitive plants.
And what about diseases?
That's another concern. They could introduce diseases that native species haven't developed immunity to.
Wow, so there are a lot of potential consequences.
There are, and it's not just about the ecosystem either. We have to think about the de-extinct animals themselves.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine being a woolly mammoth born into this world that's so different from what your ancestors knew.
It would be a whole new world.
Exactly. New predators, new food sources, a potentially hostile climate. It's a lot to adapt to.
That does raise some ethical questions. Are we bringing them back just to face a whole new set of challenges?
That's a tough question, and it leads to another concern, what some call the slippery slope argument.
Okay, the slippery slope. What's that all about?
It's the idea that once we start bringing back extinct species, it'll be hard to stop. Where do we draw the line?
Right.
Will we start bringing back all sorts of creatures, even ones that could be dangerous?
Like a T-Rex.
Well, maybe not a T-Rex, but you get the idea. It's about the potential for things to get out of hand.
So it's not just about the woolly mammoth, it's about the precedent we're setting.
Exactly. Once we cross that threshold of de-extinction, it could be hard to say no to other more risky projects.
It's like opening Pandora's box.
In a way, yes.
So this is about more than just science, it's about our relationship with nature as a whole.
It really is. It's about how much we should be manipulating the natural world and what the consequences might be.
This is getting pretty philosophical.
Those are big questions. We're talking about life and death, evolution, the very fabric of nature.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is, but it's important to have these conversations now before we go too far down this road.
So with all these potential downsides, is there still a strong case for bringing back the woolly mammoth?
There are definitely people who believe the benefits outweigh the risks.
Like what?
Well, as we talked about earlier, there's the potential for restoring ecosystems, slowing permafrost thaw, even mitigating climate change.
It's like using science to try to fix some of the damage we've done to the planet.
That's one way to look at it.
Exactly.
And there's also the potential for advancements in science and technology that could benefit everyone.
Right. We talked about the possibilities in medicine and conservation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, some people would say that even if those benefits do materialize, they don't justify the ethical concerns.
It's a tough call for sure.
And there's also an emotional argument to consider for a lot of people. The idea of bringing back extinct creatures is really inspiring.
I get that it's like stepping back in time, seeing these creatures that have been gone for so long.
Exactly. It captures the imagination. And for some, it represents a chance to right past wrongs, to acknowledge our impact on the planet and try to make things better.
It's a powerful idea.
It is. And it forces us to confront some really fundamental questions about our values and our place in the world.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation. So far, we've explored both the excitement of de-extinction and the very real concerns that come with it.
It's a complex issue for sure.
Absolutely. And it seems like the more we learn, the more questions we have.
That's the nature of science. I guess the more we discover, the more we realize we don't know.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think the most important thing is to keep the conversation going, to engage with different perspectives, to proceed with both caution and a healthy dose of humility.
Because this isn't just about science, it's about our future.
Exactly. The decisions we make about de-extinction today will have ripple effects for generations to come.
So now I'm really curious to hear your final thoughts on this. If we do manage to bring back the woolly mammoth, what does that mean for our relationship with nature and the future of our planet?
That's a huge question, and I don't think anyone has a definitive answer, but it could represent a major shift in how we see ourselves in the natural world.
How so?
Well, for a long time, we viewed ourselves as separate from nature, as masters of our domain.
Right.
But de-extinction challenges that idea. It suggests that we have the power to not just destroy, but also to create, to literally reshape life on Earth.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is, and it raises some big questions about responsibility. If we have this power, how do we use it wisely?
It's a daunting challenge, but also an exciting opportunity.
It is. We're on the cusp of a new era in our relationship with nature, and how we navigate this era will shape the future of our planet.
This conversation definitely needs to continue.
It does, and we encourage all of you listening to do your own research, consider the different viewpoints, and form your own opinions about the future of de-extinction.
We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts and key takeaways. Welcome back to the show. It's time for the final part of our deep dive into the world of woolly mammoth revival.
Yeah, It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of gene editing to the huge ethical questions about bringing back extinct species.
And we've explored the potential impacts, on ecosystems and even climate change.
We've talked about some pretty mind-boggling possibilities, but also some real concerns that we need to address.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
So as we wrap things up, I thought maybe we could try to distill some key takeaways from our conversation.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so for me, I think the biggest takeaway is the sheer speed of scientific advancement. And it's amazing to think that what was once science fiction is now becoming a real possibility.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you think about it. The combination of ancient DNA retrieval, CRISPR technology, and synthetic biology is giving us these powerful tools to manipulate life itself.
It's like we're on the verge of rewriting the evolutionary story.
But with that power comes huge responsibility, as we've been discussing. De-extinction raises some really profound ethical questions about animal welfare, ecological balance, even our role in shaping the future.
It's not just a scientific question, it's a societal one.
Exactly. And we need to have these open and honest conversations about the benefits and the risks, not just among scientists, but involving everyone. Ethicists, policymakers, the public.
We need to approach this whole thing with a sense of humility and caution, realizing that we don't have all the answers.
And we need to be transparent, making sure that the research is done ethically and with the well-being of both animals and ecosystems in mind.
It's a lot to consider, but the stakes are incredibly high. The decisions we make today about de-extinction will have consequences for a long time to come.
No doubt about it. This isn't just about the woolly mammoth. It's about setting a precedent for how we use these powerful technologies in the future.
So as we look ahead, what are some things we should be watching for in this whole woolly mammoth revival saga?
Well, on the scientific side, keep an eye on those advancements in gene editing and reproductive technologies.
Yeah.
Researchers are constantly refining their techniques, trying to overcome those challenges of creating those viable mammoth-like embryos.
It's a race against time to piece together the genetic puzzle of the woolly mammoth.
Exactly. And also keep an eye on the regulatory landscape. Governments around the world are trying to figure out how to classify and regulate genetically engineered species, especially the ones intended for release into the wild.
Those decisions will have a big impact on how these projects move forward.
Absolutely. And of course, the ethical debate will continue to evolve as the science progresses.
And that's where the public comes in. I think it's crucial for everyone to stay informed, to engage in the conversation, and to make their voices heard.
I agree. The future of de-extinction, like the future of our planet, is in our hands.
Well said. So this has been an amazing deep dive. We've explored the science, the ethics, the potential benefits, and the risks of bringing back the woolly mammoth. It's a topic that really gets you thinking about our relationship with the natural world.
It's a reminder that science is constantly pushing boundaries, and that it's up to us to use those advancements wisely.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of woolly mammoth revival.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.